Hey, it's Ricki Burke, cybersec people here. So I'm here with my friend Saaim Khan, who's a multiple business owner, and one of those businesses is content protection. So we've been having a few conversations over the last couple of weeks. Two topics which have been on the agenda is security awareness and also the mandatory breach notification laws that are coming in later next month. So I'd like to add those topics that we've been talking about and hopefully share some advice. So, Saaim, who are you?
Hey, thanks for having me on this, Ricky. Look, I've been in the security industry since 2010. Worked on first on the other side of the fence in terms of consulting services and on the reseller side, and then also have done projects via secondments at our customers, and then in about 5 years ago started content protection with a group of colleagues who are also in the security industry, and we've been going from strength to strength. And then somewhere along the line, I realized a couple of years ago that security awareness is not getting as much attention as it needs.
Hmm.
So that's an area that I've also been working in, first at my previous employer, and then moving on to start my own thing. So
Cool.
that's me in a nutshell. And these are the two areas I like to work in.
Okay. So a big topic that we've been talking about is security awareness. It's just something I'm seeing more and more of when looking at companies across Australia.
Mm.
So different companies will be on different journeys or different stages of that journey. Obviously, maybe they're more mature, or larger corporates are more mature on that stage, and there'll be some companies that are just starting that journey. I suppose something I wanted, you to pick up and maybe share is if a company is starting to look at this path, security awareness. I suppose what's the best advice and tips how a company should get started?
Okay, well, I like the fact that you use the word journey, because what a lot of, in my experience and in conversations with a lot of companies or people, I've come across the fact that people are considering security awareness as a problem worth solving.
Right.
It's a phenomenon that occurs with there's got a lot of parallels in other things. Like, for example, if you type the word security awareness in any bookstore, online, a bookstore website, the number one hits won't be information security awareness. It'll be about keeping your office safe. It'll be about practicing work OHS. It'll be about keeping your family safe on vacation. And that makes sense to us for some reason, but information security awareness just seems to be this problem we'll try to solve with getting a platform with some videos and some phishing simulations. But it's not that. It's actually a day-to-day occupational aspect that you have to look at. Because, face it, computers are part of our lives. That's a whole on discussion. But, like you said, organizations need to look at this as a maturity journey. Where are we now? And where do we need to go? But that's where I think organizations should also start looking at the business that they're in. So an organization which has a lot of focus on retail should be emphasizing more on physical security, because that's where their frontline staff is. That's where they have exposed computers. That's where they have more susceptibility to having a compromised machine or compromised data, as compared to someone which is an online business, 100% online, works out of a single location, right? So organizations need to let business drive the requirements of their security awareness, as opposed to saying, there's this great product that's going to go out and solve my problems. And you know what? I think a lot of leaders in security awareness and training here and overseas also talk about the fact that having phishing testing done every quarter is not enough. And looking at click rates is also a fool's errand, because click rates just tell you if someone was having a low moment and fell for it in that point in time. It's actually what they did. Security awareness is more about culture than it is about knowing what a phishing email is and knowing what ransomware is. So really organizations need to understand on, what's what's my organization's current understanding of my business and of what could go wrong with my business, and then tying that to, okay, what's the culture at my company. Someone who's been a mentor to me, since I came over in security, he actually has a really good way of explaining culture, which is, culture is the least bad habit that management allows. So, you have to really understand what the culture of the company is, and from there on, see how that reflects into the business, and then how are you going to tackle it from a cyber perspective. And what is and that sort of goes on to answer, like a future state or a vision question on what does heightened awareness at my company look like.
Yeah.
And if the only thing that you can come up with is, oh, we have 0 incidents, yeah, you're not looking at it right. Security is not just about preventing a data breach from happening. Security is also about ensuring that the integrity of what you say and what you provide, and the assurance that you give with it, that is maintained, and that you are reliable. So going back to the original 3 tenets of security, which is confidentiality, integrity, availability. But there's also 2 other things which organizations need to start thinking. There's actually some really good material that came out of last year's Global Security Awareness Education Conference.
Right.
I can share the link with you of the research papers. It's basically an anthology of papers.
Yeah, please do.
They added 2 more points. The 4th thing, in addition to CIA, was actually something along the lines of adversarial thinking.
Yeah. Okay.
And adversarial thinking is now something which all of us need to consider. And I'm not saying become an expert on, using phrases like adversarial thinking and thinking about, what hackers are doing and knowing their techniques, but it's actually a little more along the lines of, okay, what could go wrong in my line of work?
Yeah.
So it's actually being a bit more mindful of the consequences of your actions.
It sounds more proactive.
It is. Look, ultimately, you speak to any security professional who's been in the industry for a while, and they will tell you that, a proactive approach is better than a reactive approach.
Yeah.
That really goes for most things in life. But the thing is, with this, all that I've said so far in the past, 5-10 minutes, it all sounds really good, right? And there are other people like me who can tell you all this thing. But the focus is more on how do you translate that into actionable steps.
Mm-hmm.
And so, some tips and points to consider on this is, okay, find an analogy which is closest to what we're trying to achieve here. And the closest thing is marketing. I mean, if you look at any good brand, the reason why they're able to elicit a desired response from their target audience is because of good marketing, right? So, there's so many examples, but just type Ogilvy in a search in a search engine, and then you can just go from there. But the point is, we need to start looking at awareness from the same way. It is not security awareness training per se; it's actually security awareness marketing, and that's what the focus should be on. And to start that, it's also a journey driven by understanding your organization. So just like in marketing, how you have market personas, people, and ideal profiles of people that you want to market your product or service to, you kind of need to take a similar approach with awareness and talk about risk personas, so to speak. What are the different kinds of people in my organization with respect to risk? And that risk, by the way, is being derived from your business. It's being derived from what could potentially go wrong with respect to the business. Yeah, sorry, go on.
In a similar way, I suppose you would look at identity and access management, who has different access and levels.
But what I'm saying is, this is a bit, see, when you talk about identity and access management, it is an implementation of a business process or a business decision about who has access to what data. And obviously it has ties in with how you classify information in your organization as well.
Right.
But what I'm alluding to is more along the lines of the fact that this is my business. Let's say I'm in the business of manufacturing pencils, right? Random example. And I have a manufacturing plant in an industrial estate west of Sydney. I have a field office, which is somewhere on Parramatta Road, which is between the city and this. And I have lots of field staff which go to the big stationers across the city selling my pencils. I have a number of risks that would impact my business, as opposed to, let's say, you're in the business of cybersecurity recruitment, right? You don't have a factory. However, your laptop or desktop or tablet is pretty much the nerve center of all your operations. So if anything happens to that, you can't continuously go. So you offset that by in cloud. So coming back to my example, there's a lot of physical security involved, because obviously I don't want someone stealing my pencils. I don't want my field staff being compromised. And both physically and the machines that they have. So they might be using tablets, or they might be using laptops. And obviously I don't want my corporate or sales office being impacted as well, right? So this is how I derive key risk personas from here. So for example, I know that my salespersons who are out on the field, there are 4 types of salespeople that I have, and this is what my business experience has shown me. You have the by the book person, you have the maverick, you have XYZ, and they all also have certain behaviors that they do. Then I start taking these personas a little bit on a higher level and applying them across the organization. Like, who are risk takers, or who are risk averse, who are more likely to listen to advisory coming from head office, who are more likely to fall into bad habits. Based on this, I can then understand, okay, this is the culture that I have to deal with. This is the culture that is my starting point.
Wow.
And then from there, you actually go and think about, what are the best ways I can communicate with them? Like, for example, try getting a salesperson to sit down and listen to you. However, you have to have, intrinsic benefit for the salesperson to sit and listen to you. So if you can establish at the beginning of it is that this is what's in for you, then they'll be, okay, now I have, this is self-serving, so I'm going to listen to you. Whereas someone who is part of your, and look, by the way, this behavior, I'm not stereotyping or generalizing. I'm just giving a generalized example. So, this behavior of not listening until there's some self-serving interest for the person could even apply to someone in HR, right? So in this scenario, you really need to understand, what kind of people you're dealing with. And then what is the right messaging that will work for them, and also the right medium. So phishing testing, that's just a very small part of this whole thing. But I'm actually talking about maybe I'll give you an example. One of the companies that I work with under the Cyber Matters brand has me sending out messaging on Slack. So we've created a profile on Slack. There's an avatar and everything, and she is a security evangelist, and she sends out information. Now, in that, the way that the reaction's been is, most of the people are on Slack, and most of the people like to consume their information that way.
It's easy.
And some people actually message this avatar, right? Saying that, could you tell me more about this? Could you tell me more about that? So it's also about saying that, okay, this is how people are comfortable in receiving and disseminating information. So you got to pick that up.
Yeah.
Try taking the same approach with another company. It might not work. Maybe they still prefer email. There is one aspect which companies still need to think about, and that is having open forums.
Right. Okay.
So you need to have, really, if I was to just talk at a high level in terms of things or elements that you need an open forum of communication.
Right.
You need a dedicated person who's going to get this done. This cannot be something which the CISO or the information security manager tacks on. You need a separate person from
someone to take that on board, and that's their baby, basically.
And contrary to popular approaches, I don't think this person should come from corporate communications.
Right. Okay.
I think this person should come from business operations.
Why is that, out of interest?
Okay, so what I have found, this is my personal view. So, if you are who is watching this, if you are a corporate communications person trying to get into cybersecurity, please do so. We need all the people we can get in the industry. But the reason is, you need someone who understands the business. who understands the nuts and bolts of this business and also has a bit of background in technology or security. Someone who comes in and starts, taking the memo of, let's say, phishing is bad, and then taking it across the board, that's not going to work. You need someone who has a pulse on the business, on what the issues of the business are. Remember, it's the business that drives security, not the other way around.
Yeah.
So, right. So if someone who understands the business can come on board, that is the person you need to get it done. Plus, if this is from an operational role, that they have a track record of getting stuff done. So a critical piece of this is having a high GSD quotient. GSD is getting stuff done, right? So if someone who has the ability to execute, that's key. And now the thing is, and the last part is understanding what are the media distribution vehicles you will use. Is it going to be email? Is it going to be physical stuff? Is it going to be, like I said, Slack, or is it going to be SMS or whatever? So you need to figure out what's the best mix. And as extension of that, you also need to make it memorable. So for example, let's say we met on Flinders Street and I gave you my business card versus we met on Flinders Street and I gave you this very nice drink bottle. How likely are you to remember me from the first encounter or from the second encounter?
The second.
So you need to have some physical manifestation and, for lack of a better word, swag with this program. Yeah. Like, for example, if someone is really, and this also then extends to another aspect, which is creating this, creating a sense of ownership and a sense of identity and aligning it with personal goals. So that is where you can even look at, but look, what I'm about to say is a fantastic thing to talk about, but it's hard to execute, which is a security ambassador program.
Okay.
Right? The thing, though, is you don't want this thing becoming, and this is what a lot of awareness programs end up being, you don't want them becoming the center of attention. It's something that's happening. Like, for example, like a volunteer group that you join, where, like a life-saving volunteer group. It doesn't take up all of your life, all time of your life, right? But it's an important part of your life. And when it comes up, you pay attention to it. That's what security awareness program should be as well. So look, like, to sum up, there are a lot of analogies in other programs or other, dissemination things that we are involved with, which are important because they have a direct impact on safety, but they don't take up a lot of your time. And, they don't try too hard. So that's what security awareness should be as well. It shouldn't try too hard, should be just ubiquitous with your daily life. And ultimately, you need to just drive home that point that, it is about security of you at home and at work.
Everywhere, yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Pleasure.
And I suppose the other topic that you and I have discussed on and offline is around the pending data or the mandatory breach notification laws that are coming out next month. And that's obviously something you're very on top of as well.
Well, look, the mandatory data breach notification, if you really look into it from a legal perspective, it's an extension of the Privacy Act. It talks about best efforts, talks about proactivity, talks about having, meaningful or reasonable controls in place. And it really depends on how you want to approach it. But I think this is a great opportunity for organizations to look at how they handle any kind of cyber incidents, right? So a lot of organizations have been talking about, it's time to get your incident response in order and things like that. That's great. But really, you need to think about it from two more perspectives, I think. One, it's what constitutes a incident. Because look, by the way, I mean, this is no surprise. Security marketers use this tactic every day. We get compromised every day because vulnerabilities are being invoked left, right, and center. So system compromise is an everyday occupational hazard of working with interconnected systems.
Yeah,
it's actually about when does that compromise become a breach. So the ability to pick that up, the ability to preempt that, or the ability to proactively deal with this, that is what this is about. Because I think you know, after this thing gets enacted, I think three things will happen. One, I think that people are obviously going to hold back. So the privacy commissioner and the powers that be will actually start saying, okay, so you knew this happened and you didn't do anything. So that's obviously in violation of the new legislative
Yeah.
updates. The second thing is you might have eager beavers over reporting. And that's another problem, right? Oh, we want to be on the front foot of this. We want to show the privacy commissioner's office that we're proactive. So we're going to tell them. And that is also something which is, it's the other extreme. And the third thing that I see happening is there will be a lot of people who are going to walk away from responsibility from this. Because, ultimately, if you are a information security manager or if you're a CISO, the legislation now says, you are responsible for this. And if you're not able to do it, like, okay, you know what? I don't want to, strange pop culture, pop culture reference. So, Doctor Strange, when Benedict Cumberbatch's character has the accident and goes to one of the surgeons and says, hey, I need you to help me with this. The guy says, no way, because it's going to spoil my record, my track record, right? So I'm not going to take this case on. It's the same. So that's another analogy that I see, in line with this. But the second aspect that I wanted to talk about is how are you going to determine that it's a breach? So we spoke about this on LinkedIn, I think yesterday as well. The fact is that people are focusing on when we detect a breach, we will do this, right? But where's that breach information coming from? So this is if Joe, who's your network security engineer, says, hey, I've discovered this using our Saaim and this and that, blah, blah, blah. It's time to invoke our incident response plan. This is our playbook, and bada bing, bada boom. What happens if, let's say, Ricki Burke, an independent security researcher, finds a vulnerability on my website and says, hey, Saaim, I think you have a bug and I'm able to theoretically log in and take over your admin panel.
Yeah.
What's my reaction going to be? Thanks, Ricki? Or is it going to be, who gave you the authority to log into my website? Or, try to brute force my website. I'm going to come after you with everything I have. And also, how does that make you feel eventually about doing the right thing again? You'd probably be like, you know what, forget about it. I'm going to reach out to this I'm going to reach out to this great company called CyberSec People. I'm just going to get a regular job. I'm not going to be an independent researcher, right? So that is another aspect of this data breaches. What happens? So like, how is this going to impact you? Are you going to go report it to the privacy commissioner? Are you going to report it to your stakeholders on what's happening? This is where good vulnerability coordination and good vulnerability handling comes into play.
Yeah.
And I think this is also part of security awareness. You need to look at not just on telling people on what to do in scenarios involving data, their personal security, but also about company security and, also about following company processes. So I think with regard to the mandatory data breach notifications, companies should also look at having processes in place around receiving third-party intelligence on vulnerabilities in their systems or of data compromises as well, right? This is where there are two ISO standards. One is the 30111 and the other is the 29147. They're both free of cost, unlike other ISO standards, which you have to pay 50, 60 euros for. But these ones are free. You can download them, you can have a read, and they're not too prescriptive. They provide an overall guideline for thinking about how do I receive information? What should be my processes in responding to this third party? How should I prioritize and manage this internally? And then how do I contact affected parties? So that is a really good way of building those necessary processes that you would need, to deal with that. So those are my views on that.
So it's going to be some interesting times coming up.
It will be. And the thing is, you know what, for all these discussions, all these predictions and everything, nothing could happen.
Yeah.
Right. And life goes on, and in most cases it does. That's what usually it is. But these events are not an opportunity, shouldn't be taken as, the Y2K bug, or or in that regard, but rather these should be taken as opportunities to take stock of how can we make our processes better, how can we make it better. Yes, exactly, right. All of these changes are an opportunity for progress.
Yeah. Look, thank you for sharing your advice. Yeah, basically, anyone that wants further advice, I think, on security awareness or the mandatory data breach notification, get in touch with Saaim directly. So, Saaim Khan, content protection. Thank you for sharing your advice today.
Thank you for the opportunity. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. All right. Thank you. Bye.